Hello and welcome to the 7th video in my 10-part series on how organizations unwittingly burn out their employees. I'm Dr. Geri Puleo, the President and CEO of Change Management Solutions, and today we're going to be talking about how politics and sabotage in the workplace create employee burnout. So when we're talking about politics or sabotage, what we're really saying is that one employee is saying, I win, but you lose. Now, some people state that politics are just a commonplace in the modern workplace. However, what I found in my research on burnout during organizational change is that overall, 50% of my participants specifically stated either politics or sabotage as a contributing factor to their burnout. But what was really interesting about this is this percentage almost doubled for change leaders, or those who were involved with implementing the change, to the change targets who were told to just do it. For change leaders, politics and sabotage contributed to their burnout in 62.5% of my participants, whereas in contrast, only about a third of change targets overall said that politics and sabotage was a contributing factor. Now, when we talk about politics and sabotage, we have to understand what we really mean by this. Politics and sabotage at work are also known as deceit, lying, betrayal, inequitable treatment, and gossip. And when you take all of these other terms for politics and sabotage together, in my research, it contributed to burnout in 78.6% of my participants. Now, what this means to you is that you need to create an environment that absolutely abhors and avoids a zero-sum culture in which one person wins only when other people lose. Because if 78.6% of my participants burned out as a result of these politics and sabotage, that's the vast majority of employees. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about this connection between burnout and politics or sabotage. This graphic is part of my BDOC model, or the Burnout During Organizational Change model, and you can learn a little bit more about that in the first video in this series. But to recap, basically employees come to work initially with feelings of hope, but considering what is going on within the organization or the organizational practices, they quickly descend from hope into frustration, anger, apathy, and then a full-blown burnout. So let's talk about some of the organizational triggers of an environment that is characterized by politics or sabotage. Well, first of all, employees are going to feel like they are being betrayed. Now think about it. If you have people gossiping behind your back or undermining your work efforts, there's a real sense of betrayal. And what I found is that people very quickly descended into the anger stage preceding burnout and kind of skimmed right through the frustration stage. In fact, one of my participants, who was a male change leader, said that you can trick me one time, but after a month or two, I'll realize that you no longer mean what you say, or that you didn't really mean it in the first place. This is a real sense of betrayal, and employees obviously are going to react negatively to it. In addition, employees will get a nagging sense of something being hidden from them. Oftentimes with politics, only people in the know are aware of what's really going on, and everybody else has to listen to the office grapevine to try to figure out what's happening. And obviously in sabotage, you don't tell people what you're doing to sabotage them. When you feel that something is being hidden from you and you're out of the loop and it's affecting your performance at work, this quickly descends into fear and anger. Another one of my participants, who was a nonprofit change leader, said it probably best. What was on the surface was not necessarily what was underneath in the political structure of the organization. Employees aren't stupid. Employees can get a really strong sense when something is being hidden from them, and their reaction is not going to be a positive one to it. And so this leads to a culture of mistrust and doubt within the workplace. If you can't trust your boss, your coworkers, the leaders in the organization, you are not going to feel comfortable and safe enough to give your all because you're afraid that the rug is basically going to be pulled out from under you. And this then causes employees to fear taking any kind of action. And that's primarily because they don't know what the consequences will be because things are being hidden from them or people are trying to actively sabotage their success. And all of this uh, bickering and juggling for position really creates an intense amount of emotional exhaustion. And when this happens, not only is there exhaustion, but employees become fearful and ultimately they disengage. And if you have a culture comprised of exhausted, frightened, and disengaged employees, the end result is that the organization is going to have very high turnover because people don't want to stay in that kind of environment. And there could even be potential litigation. That would be stemming from inequitable treatment directed towards people that are in protected classes. So the next step is, how do we stop the sabotage in the workplace? Well, first of all, you need to look beyond the obvious. In order to stop sabotage or negative politics from undermining the organization, you have to look beyond what your written policies are. And you need to begin to bring the human back into the workplace. In other words, that means active listening with both your ears and your eyes. Morabian said in his communication theory that 55% of the meaning of a communication is found in body language. 38% of the meaning comes through the tone of voice, and only about 7% of the meaning comes from the actual words that you've been using. The problem that I see in many organizations is that they overly rely on their written policies, but they're not really watching and observing what is really going on within their workplaces. In other words, how their employees are interacting with each other, how managers are treating subordinates, and how subordinates are responding to their managers. Now, if when you actively listen with your ears and your eyes, you see that there are evidences of sabotage and negative politics within the organization, you have to take immediate action to stop these practices. This might be, once you've identified who the cause of all this problem is, it might be a professional improvement plan, which is part of a disciplinary process. It can also be a demotion of that individual, or it can be terminating someone because of the negativity that they're spreading through the gossip, the politics, and the overt or covert sabotage. One of the best ways to overcome this so that employees are not surprised is to adopt a written code of ethics. Now, many companies have these codes of ethics because they can be very important if, God forbid, there's some type of legal action against the corporation. But it's not enough just to have a written code of ethics. You have to incorporate into the really fiber of your organization the values, the mission, and the attitudes that that code of ethics encompasses. So the key takeaway here: adopt a zero tolerance for political sabotage in the workplace. By permitting even a little bit of it to occur within your workforce, this can create very fertile ground for it to take hold like a weed and overcome the workplace. But it's not enough to do just that. You also have to consider the organizational practices. One of the things that is probably critical here is to remember that people don't necessarily learn by what you tell them. People learn by what they see. And employees in particular will determine what the appropriate, acceptable, and most ambitious way for them to work within your workplace is based upon how you treat other employees. So compare those written policies that we talked about in the last slide with the human application of those policies, or what the employees are doing with it. Consider performance management. You can have a great performance management system in place, but what gets measured gets done. And employees who strive just to achieve a result, but they do it in a way that is unethical or that hurts other employees, sabotages them, or creates an environment of conflicting politics, then if those employees are promoted or they are rewarded for that behavior, then other employees are going to believe that that is the only way to get ahead and progress within the organization. It's not just what is accomplished, but it's also how it is accomplished. So what you may want to consider is putting extra points into a performance management system for teamwork and sharing and the different values that are encoded within your code of ethics. Also consider your promotion criteria, because what gets rewarded will be duplicated by other employees within the organization. So when you're looking at promoting a candidate, an internal candidate, into a managerial, more senior role, have a more holistic approach, not just what they've done, but how they've done it. Look at the networks that they've developed within the organization and really ask yourself if they are open and they're team based. The big thing with politics and sabotage is that it's a very, very selfish approach that pits an individual against not only another individual employee, but potentially an entire department or an entire company. And when that happens, that's never good for the organization. And then finally, consider how you respond to employees who complain or bring up to HR that there is some potential political backstabbing or politics going on within the organization. When an employee does that, it takes a great deal of courage. If you poo-poo it, then they are not going to come forward again, and this negativity will just fester within the workplace. Remember, people learn by what they see. So other people who might be the subjects of sabotage will consider what they should do about it based on how you treated another employee who came forward as the whistleblower. If you destroy or ignore the whistleblower's complaints, that will seriously undermine the trust within your workplace, and you're never going to have an organization that is very well organized within teams and gets things done. So the key takeaway here: create a formal structure that rewards win-win results. Don't leave it up to the employees to try to figure out what they need to do in order to succeed, but provide a structure that will guide their actions and that reinforces your zero tolerance for politics and sabotage in the workplace. So perhaps Greg Anderson said it best. The law of win-win says, let's not do it your way or my way. Let's do it the best way. Politics and sabotage focus on selfish aims that do not support teamwork, trust, or innovation. And teamwork, trust, and innovation are keys to success in the 21st century. Good luck.